comments and break, because that comes right after this committee. And we'll go straight through Waste Management Committee, Nuclear Materials Committee, and then we will have the public comment section. So with that, Mr. Shepherd.
Thank you, ma'am. Again, we welcome you to Hilton Head. We're now at the part of the time where we're going to do the Waste Management Committee. Committee members are myself, Earl Shepherd, Jenny Jones, Louis Chavis, Susan Corbett, Don Gillis, David Hoyle, Daniel Kaminsky, and John McMichael. The committee purpose is on the screen. Moving forward. Recommendation status update. We have open recommendation 336, waste management milestones. 2 pending recommendations, 339, liquid waste revision 20, and 340, commend the originators of the double stacking idea. Next meeting is April the 11th, 4:30 to 6:20 at the DOE Meeting Center, 230 Village Green Boulevard, Suite 222 in Aiken. Presentation today will be Solid Waste by Mr. Lee Fox of SRNS. And Mr. Lee.
Okay, am I on? Can you hear me? Okay, well, welcome back to this afternoon. Obviously, none of you went outside and saw the beautiful weather out on the beach. I am going to be talking about the solid waste side of the site, and these are our basic drivers. We want to make sure that none of the workers in the workforce get hurt. We want to protect the public. We're concerned about the environment, so nothing that we do we want to have that hurt the environment. And we want to stay legal while we're doing that. Just kind of a refresher on what kind of waste we do deal with. DOE Order 435.1 drives all of our radioactive waste. And so this is basically the flow chart that we go through to decide who gets to take care of it. The high-level waste, that's all with SRR, and we do not process that or manage any of that waste. The next group that comes off is the TRU waste, which we've all heard about over the last several years, and the vast majority of that's gone to the WIP site. It comes down to norm, which is the naturally occurring, and if it doesn't drop out as that, it drops out as low-level waste, and that is the vast majority of what we deal with from a total volume. You've seen a diagram similar to this. We modified it to show where waste actually goes on site. And we've got solid waste right in the middle, and that's kind of where we feel like we are, because every place on site wants us to stay in business. Whether it's picking up the sanitary waste from all the buildings, the C&D waste, construction and demolition waste, which can be anywhere from the trees when they clear the de-ash basin, to a new building site. Construction materials go in the C&D landfill. We actually use 3 rivers for our public sanitary waste. After it goes through North Augusta material recovery, and I'm proud to say that we're recovering very close to 50% of our sanitary waste right now. We send waste off-site to the WIP facility. And like I say, low-level waste is our main business, and we do dispose of that on-site. This is a picture of solid waste. It shows active and past areas where we've disposed waste. The dog leg, I guess we are in one of the golf capitals of the world. Doesn't match my golf game because my dog leg goes off to the right, but Anyway, this is all low-level waste disposal area. And you may say, well, but you've got trailers up here. Well, we're borrowing the space for the time being. We do not expect to be up in this area disposing of low-level waste until the 2030s. So we've got a little bit of time to move out. This is a concrete structure that is used for low-level waste. And if it's a little bit higher activity, we need to delay the movement of the waste into the ground. The concrete slows it down, gives the isotopes to go ahead and have time to work through another several half-lives. The black covered areas are trenches, low-level waste trenches that have been covered with a geotechnical material to basically shed the water away from the waste and drain off into the areas around it. Let's see. We are currently storing TRU waste in these covered structures that you see right here. We have some more TRU waste back here, and then also TRU pad 26. It doesn't look like it did 15 years ago. I can remember the first time I went out and looked at a TRU covered pad, and it was just row after row of 55-gallon drum. At this point, if we were really pushed, we could probably put most of the TRU waste that we have left in, say, this complex. We use this area for shipping and characterization. So the not so green, because it was taken in the wintertime, is mixed waste disposal area that was disposed in the 80s and 90s, and it has all been covered. This is the kind of diagram we'll go through when somebody says they have low-level waste that we need to dispose. We need to decide whether it meets our waste acceptance criteria for disposal on site. If it does not, we will ship it either to a commercial facility that accepts government waste, or actually out to an off-site government disposal area, such as Nevada National Security Site. Okay, that slide doesn't say much. These are a couple of, give you an idea of how we actually dispose of the waste. This is one of our trenches. It's actually a part of a trench. Our trenches are approximately 650 feet long and 100 feet wide. We don't dig all of that out initially all at one time, because the rain that we get will actually wash the sides in. So we'll dig a partial trench. Those boxes are approximately 50 feet long, so that gives you some idea of the dimensions of the disposal trench. I've already talked a little bit about this facility. This is one of our newest trenches that we are filling. It is an engineered trench. The only thing that makes it engineered is that we have a ramp that allows us to actually drive the transport truck into the trench and then offload it using a large off-the-road forklift. So everything that's going to be disposed in this engineered trench will be in some kind of containment box. The area right here with all of the extremely large stainless steel cylinders. These are components from the Naval Reactors Program. And so they come in, like I say, stainless steel canisters, and they will actually remain exactly where they are. And when we close this area, the cover will actually be mounted over those containers. Proud to say we have absolutely no low-level waste, legacy waste left. That has all been disposed during the ARRA program. Okay, let's see. The next waste that we really deal with is the hazardous and the mixed low-level waste. The hazardous waste is typically any that you would think of as far as chemicals that are gathered together, and all of that waste is actually shipped off to a commercial vendor for destruction. If it has a radioactive component and it doesn't meet the TRU criteria that we'll see in a few minutes, it's disposed of mixed low-level waste. It also is packaged and goes to a off-site either commercial disposal or again back out to Nevada. So neither one of those two wastes are disposed on site. We have no legacy waste stored at Savannah River of hazardous waste or mixed waste. We pretty much follow the RCRA rules there, and that waste is sent off-site within 1 year. And we don't get a lot of the mixed waste, or for that matter, the hazardous waste. Our biggest generator of hazardous waste is the SRNL, just because of the type of work that they're doing up there. And this is just showing a stainless steel box that's being ready to be shipped to Nevada. Okay, TRU. This is a fairly empty TRU pad. Originally, we would be storing 55-gallon drums, 4 to a pallet, stacked 3 high, and you would not be able to see the back wall of this pad. So it does look fairly empty. We have 3 main containers. Most of our waste leaves in the 55-gallon drum. We also use a standard waste box, which affords being able to put a little bit bigger items into the containers. And the standard large box, Savannah Riverside is currently the only site that has used this box for disposal of waste. We loaded these boxes during ARRA. Again, they're holding larger sized pieces of equipment that we did not size reduce, either because of concerns for the workers to go in and actually cut the waste up. We have 7 of those left to ship to the WIP site, and so we're very, very close. This is the actual loading of a TruPack 2 with 7 55-gallon drums. It can also hold 2 of the standard waste boxes. They strap them together one on top of the other. So we typically get about 30 cubic meters of TRU waste a year. We have approximately 750 cubic meters of TRU today. Jack was correct this morning when he said we have about 650 cubic meters of legacy waste. Had WIP not had their 2 accidents, we were set up to make shipments of that last 650 cubic meters, and so we would have been storing only the newly generated TRU waste that the site is continuing to make. The labs continue to generate TRU. The program over in K area of their 3013 evaluations and the blend down generates TRU waste. And HB Line, because of their programs, they also generate TRU waste. We are currently anticipating that WIP is going to say, we want the rest of your waste, so we are going through about a 6-month program. We have about 2 months left of getting ready to ship waste to the WIP site. So whenever we get the phone call, we'll start loading trucks and send waste across I-20. And that's where we are with solid waste today.
Have any questions from the board?
Yes.
Mr. Hoyle?
David Hoyle. Lee, excellent presentation. Thank you for being here and doing this. Quick question. You said for off-site disposal, we use either commercial or Nevada nuclear security site. So is Hanford no longer receiving waste from other DOE sites?
I don't believe Hanford is, I know they're not receiving any waste from us. I can tell you that much.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Shepard?
Yes, Lee, when you were showing the slide with the engineered trench, kind of got a two-part question. Will we ever have to go back into those trenches to check anything? And how long will those containers last being buried?
Okay, excellent questions. Let me go back. We have to produce a performance assessment for our low-level waste disposal. And the performance assessment basically looks at the waste form, whether it's direct buried or whether it goes into one of our concrete structures, and how that waste will actually make its way into the environment. Obviously, I mean, these trenches are not lined. We're going to try to exclude the water by covering them. And so what we will do as this trench is being filled in, we actually put in small lysimeter wells that come in around the exterior of the trench, and it looks for migration of any isotopes as these boxes actually degrade over the years. Our performance assessment assumes that the box isn't there. So in other words, the radioactive waste that we're putting in the ground, we immediately assume that it's available to the sand and clay that's right around the boxes. And so we actually install, like I say, small lysimeter wells, look for this migration, which is extremely slow. So to answer your question, we're assuming that those boxes are going to go away. As this trench gets filled in, we actually mound clay back over it to divert the water off of the waste itself. And so that's basically how we make it work.
And my last question, if you move a couple of slides forward, where the gentleman is loading the truck, right there. He doesn't have on any kind of anything. Is that normal?
Absolutely. Our facility, for the most part, is a clean facility. The only CAs that we will have will be actually in the trench. All of the boxes that come into us come in clean. When I say clean, no radioactive contamination on the outside.
Thank you.
Ms. Corbett?
Thank you. Susan Corbett, CAB. So let me ask you a few questions if you don't mind here. I'd first like to start with the definition of low-level waste because my understanding of low-level is that it doesn't mean necessarily, it doesn't really mean much of anything. It just means that there are dangerous radionuclides in there, just not in the high enough concentration to make them high-level waste. So pretty much everything that is created as waste in nuclear processes is included in low level, just in low concentrations. Is that a reasonable definition?
Yes, we can actually see most of the isotopes at the low-level waste realm, yes.
Right,
Very
because
small
I've
quantities.
been watching Barnwell for many years, and I used to go and get the manifests on the shipments, and everything's in there, plutonium, everything, very long-lived things. Just in the DOE has set some arbitrary limit about how much, in terms of the concentration of the shipment, can be only a certain percentage of that. So when we say low level, we don't necessarily mean low risk. We just mean that there's smaller concentrations of these dangerous radioisotopes. Is that correct?
No, that would be correct.
Okay, so I had a bunch of questions here. I mean, you're aware of what happened at Barnwell, and actually, I'm not sure how this facility differs from the practices at Barnwell, which created a large plume of tritium that has migrated over a mile off-site. Are you doing anything different? I mean, I was very disturbed to hear there's no liners in these trenches because, you know, this is basically what contributed to the plume. Because there are no liners, and the rainwater comes in contact with the waste. The waste is not completely sealed. There are holes that allow the water to flow through, and eventually it leaves the site. And of course, the first thing that leaves is tritium because it's water soluble, but some forms of cesium are also water soluble. And actually, just recently, I went and looked at the readings from the plume, and we are seeing some cesium migrating off the site. So I'm interested have we learned anything from that? Are we doing anything different here to keep that from migrating off the site?
I'm not sure that I would say that we're doing anything different based off of what happened at Barnwell. We've reviewed our practices very well, and it may be appropriate to have a presentation of the performance assessment that we have for our facility given to the CAB. And that would explain maybe a lot of your questions about isotopic movement through the soil.
Okay, so, and then the building, I guess it was like in slide, the one that shows the basic overview of that one there. So the long concrete building with the windows in it, you said, could we call that higher than Class C waste? Could it be characterized by that? And that's what they call it commercially. I don't know what you call it here, but is that for your greater than Class C waste?
No, it is not. It is still DOE's classified as low-level waste. It's going to be Class A, B.
I'm curious as to why it requires that. How is it different from what you're doing with the other waste? Why that it requires that building? Are you keeping the rain off of it? Are you using it as shielding for the environment? What is it? How is it different?
Typically, the waste that we will put into this facility, or one that's very difficult to see back here, is if the tritium is a little bit higher. We are wanting to actually cause its movement into the environment to be a little bit slower so that the 12.6 half-life takes into account.
Is that the only thing that it's higher in concentrations of, just tritium, or does it have higher concentrations of cesium, other things as well?
Predominantly, it's tritium. It could be slightly higher iodine. Those are the two biggies that we usually see.
Okay, and also the naval stainless steel naval storage. Is is that actually a storage container, or is that the reactor vessel itself, or can you explain what that is?
These are the actual storage container. The component is on the inside. Most of the components that we get out of the Naval Reactor Program are classified, and so that's one of the reasons why they're in a very thick stainless steel welded shut container. It is predominantly activated metal. It is not the reactor itself. When they
Is it the reactor internals?
No, it is not.
Okay.
It is the shielding that will be around the reactor. That is really the only part that we get here. It's
Okay.
fan over.
So, in that picture above that, then I see a trench, and this is disturbingly a lot like what's going on at Barnwell. How long does it typically take to fill up a trench like that?
Typically, we would not want to keep a trench of this size, and this is only a portion of the trench, open for much more than 6 months. Like I say, typically because of the rain and the fact that a lot of our soil is a clay sand mixture, a heavy deluge like we've had the last month will cause sloughing on the sides, and when that happens, then we lose some of the trench area.
So for 6 months, the rain does fill these trenches, and that does filter down into the groundwater, just like at Barnwell, which I've seen a lot of photography and photographs of the trenches actually filled with rainwater before it dissipates down into the ground, I assume. So there is an opportunity during this time for rain to collect in these trenches, right?
It typically doesn't collect. I mean, it drains within a matter of days.
Where does it drain to?
On into the subsoil.
Okay. And is there opportunity for the rainwater to come in contact with the radioactive materials while it's sitting in that trench?
This sort of trench that you're seeing here or here, no, it does not.
So none of these containers have any openings to the outside? No air
They-
hole, no venting holes or anything?
These containers are all sealed.
So there's it's not open to the environment at all.
That's correct.
Okay. Let's see. And then you said something at the end about, let me see here. I can't find it. All right, thank you. Thank you for answering those questions.
Ms. Gillis?
Oh, shucks. Well, there goes my presentation thing. Dawn Gillis Cab. One thing that I have a question from what you said just a few minutes ago. When the discussion about the radionuclides that are contained in low-level waste are the same nuclides that are in high-level waste, correct? More or less.
More or less.
Now, I thought I heard you say that the risk was similar. Maybe I misunderstood. The risk was similar of the high-level waste versus the low-level waste. Did I misunderstand something?
No, the risk for low-level waste is not anywhere near that of the high-level waste. The concentrations are so much smaller that we don't expect that to affect the groundwater or any movement off-site.
Okay, I didn't catch that in so I just wanted to make sure that that was correct.
Right.
Thank you.
I have one more question if nobody else does.
I don't see any others.
What is the closest body of water near here? What's the closest surface water?
I'm not even sure that you can see it. There is, which creek is it? 3 Mile Creek? Upper Three Runs? Okay. Upper Three Runs is back here in this area.
Okay.
Our 435.1, the DOE order that we follow, and that we're looking at, we have to be able to basically go 100 meters outside of where we have waste and look at the groundwater, and we're saying that we're not going to contaminate it at that 100-meter boundary.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Mr. Shepherd, anything else from the Waste Management Committee?
Thank you, Lee. That was a great presentation, and I advise you to run while you can.
Thank you.
Okay, and as mentioned earlier, we're going to skip the break and we're going to combine the two public comments periods, the one scheduled for now with the one later. So we are moving directly to the Nuclear Materials Committee. Mr. Powell.
Thank you. I'm Larry Powell with the Nuclear Materials Committee. On the committee are Gil Allensworth, Louis Chavis, Susan Corbett, David Hoyle, Don Gillis, Vice Chair, Jenny Jones, Dan Kaminsky, John McMichael, and Mary Weber. We have our committee purpose up on the board there. If you'd like to read that. Our next meeting is Tuesday, April the 11th, at 6:30 p.m. to 8:20 p.m. at the DOE Meeting Center in Village Green Boulevard in Aiken. We have two open recommendations. We have one that we've decided to mark as closed, but I think Dawn had some comments she wanted to make on number 341.
Dawn Gillis, Cab. On 341, we discussed briefly yesterday, but I'm willing to recommend that we close that one, but I want to make sure, I'd like to add that during the committee meetings, when the tech rep does their update, that a bullet is put in that update that says what activities have taken place since the last meeting to try to push this forward, to try to deal with getting the NEPA in place or plans or whatever's happening. If nothing's happened since the last time, then that's what's stated, nothing's happening. I just want to make sure it's on the record. If that's agreed, then I'll recommend we close that one.
Thank you, Dawn. Our presentation today is by Karen Patterson. She's with the Governor's Nuclear Advisory Council for South Carolina, whoever the governor is. And so, Karen, if you'd go ahead with your presentation, thank you.
See, Larry doesn't know our new name either. We are now the South Carolina, even I can't say it, South Carolina Nuclear Advisory Council, but we still do everything the same way we did. We report to the governor. So I'm going to eventually get to what the South Carolina Nuclear Advisory Council does, but I want to do two things first. I brought props, which are my go-to resources. It never occurred to me that I would be able to show you how useful these props are, but I have the definition of high-level waste and low-level waste right here, so I will read them to you. High-level wastes are the highly radioactive waste generated by the reprocessing, chemical separation of uranium and plutonium from other elements of used nuclear fuel and the used nuclear fuel itself. So high-level waste is what comes out of reprocessing or used fuel. Low-level waste is a catch-all category defined by what it is not rather than what it is. Low-level waste includes all radioactive waste other than uranium mill tailings, transuranic waste, and high-level waste, including spent nuclear fuel. The radiation from low-level waste sometimes is high enough to require shielding for handling and shipment. So it is confusing. That's why I brought these resources to show you. I think you guys could actually, they're my go-to resources. I would recommend them to you. So the second thing I'm going to do is I haven't been here for a while, and I know that I come to the Waste Management and Nuclear Materials Committee meetings, and I stand up and I make sometimes acerbic comments, but I just want you to know that I really appreciate what you do. I want to tell you why I got to where I am and why I know how hard it is for you to do your job. Plus, Larry told me I could spend as long as I wanted on this presentation. And I have a big ego, but not quite as big as the president's. So I grew up in Florida in the 50s and 60s, mucking around in swamps. I went to college right at the time that they were creating the Environmental Protection Agency, the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, Endangered Species Act, National Environmental Policy Act. My first semester out of college, I got a job at the Savannah River Ecology Laboratory, purely because they were going to let me muck around in the swamps and pay me for it. The fact that I was coming to a nuclear facility, right over my head, it meant nothing to me. I knew nothing about nuclear at that point. This was early in the 70s. We're in the middle, it turns out we're in the middle of the Cold War, so everything was still very secretive about the site. So my job at SREL, I did not know it at the time, but it set me up for my entire career. So I have spent the last 40 some odd years looking at the environments around all kinds of nuclear facilities, the weapons complex facilities, nuclear power plants, nuclear storage facilities. I've also looked, I'm an environmental consultant. I've looked at coal-fired power plants. I've looked at chemical processing facilities on and off the Savannah River site. I've looked at industrial facilities. I've looked at naval bases, airfields that are closing. And I'm telling you, of all those sites, the sites that are the best managed, the best maintained, and actually are the best for the environment are the nuclear sites, commercial and defense. So, I'm going along. I've been working at the Savannah River site for 20 some odd years. I still don't know anything about it. The Cold War ends. President Clinton decides that the public needs to know more about what goes on those nuclear facilities. So he creates the Site-Specific Advisory Board. The Savannah River Site Citizens Advisory Board, the first seating was in 1994, and I joined the board in 1996. Yeah, that's right. I can tell you what I knew about nuclear at that time. Remember, I grew up in Florida in the 60s. I knew Cold War, Cuban Missile Crisis, duck and cover, and we're all gonna die. That is what I knew when I got on the cab. So I know how hard it is for you guys to figure out what's going on. So I really appreciate the time and the effort that you put into this. I know sometimes you feel like you're treading water, sometimes you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, or I did. Sometimes I have to think about it so hard it makes my brain hurt. But every so often, you get to the top of the mountain and you look at the view and you think, this is why I do this. So it's hard work. I know when you're sitting out there, you're thinking, why am I doing this? There is a reason for it. And public participation is very important. The last 20 years of my career, I spent pushing public participation because it is very, when it's done right, it's very effective. So, enough of that. We're going to talk about the Nuclear Advisory Council. Okay. The whole purpose of the Advisory Council is to advise the governor on any nuclear activities in the state. The reason there is a governor's, I call it the Governor's Advisory Council. The reason there is a Nuclear Advisory Council is because when Jim Hodges was the governor many, many years ago, DOE decided they were going to start consolidating plutonium at the Savannah River site. Jim Hodges did not think that was a good idea. The government overruled him. So he decided he would form this advisory council to keep an eye on not only the Savannah River site, but all the other nuclear facilities that we have in South Carolina. We have probably more varieties of nuclear facilities than any state, particularly for a small state. We don't exist at the whim of a particular governor. We are incorporated by statute. The statute gives us these, I gotta read this. So we have some specific duties as outlined in the statute. We provide advice and recommendations to the governor. One is, the number 2 up here is, we provide advice and recommendations pertaining to the Atlantic Compact. The Atlantic Compact is 3 states, South Carolina, New Jersey, and Connecticut, who are allowed, that South Carolina lets them put waste into the low-level waste disposal facility that Susan was talking about, the Barnwell facility. We provide advice and recommendations on the various programs to the United States pertaining to nuclear waste. And number 1, We provide advice and recommendations to the governor on issues involving the use, handling, and management of the transportation, storage, or disposal of nuclear materials within South Carolina, or such use, handling, transportation, storage, or disposal of nuclear materials outside of the state, which may affect public health, welfare, safety, and environment of the citizens of the South Carolina. We have yet to find something that has nuclear involved that we cannot look at because of the statute. And the part that we focus on, how we decide what we should look at, is that last phrase. It may affect the public health, welfare, safety, and environment of the citizens of South Carolina. So we are the governor's eyes and ears, essentially, to look at the nuclear activities in our state and decide, does she need to know that something is going on, that she needs, I say she, pretty soon I'm going to say he, that they need to know about, because it may affect the health, welfare, safety of the public. Okay, the statute also sets up the membership. One member is appointed by the President of the Senate. That's Tom Young, who is the state senator from Aiken. One member is appointed by the Speaker of the House. That position is vacant right now, but I think we have an appointment. There are two environmental positions. I'm one of them. The other one is Dr. Carolyn Hudson. She is a retired geology professor from USC. There is one position reserved for somebody who has knowledge and expertise of nuclear power. That's Steve Byrne. He is currently the president of SCANA's Generation Transmission Company. I think that's what they call it. He used to be the chief nuclear operating officer at VC Summer, and he is the driving force behind getting those two new reactors at VC Summer. Same deal with nuclear industry, somebody who has knowledge and expertise in some aspect of the nuclear industry other than nuclear power. That is Jim Little, who has been all over the country working at nuclear facilities, commercial and defense. He was, for a while he was here, he was president of Westinghouse Safety Management Systems. Two academic positions. Dr. Peterson is the head of the physics department at Francis Marion. He has a PhD in health physics from NC State. And then Dr. Van Brunt teaches chem engineering at the University of South Carolina. And if you went to the University of South Carolina and work at SRR, you probably had him for a class. And then the last member is an at-large member. We have this lovely gentleman, Claude Cross, who used to drive nuclear submarines. So there is a lot of nuclear expertise on this board. There's also public expertise. Carolyn and I don't have a lot of nuclear expertise, and the Senate and the House members certainly do not. Okay, this is what we talk about, or what we don't talk about. So let's talk about what we don't talk about. Some of this is kind of gray, and it depends on what the chairman's philosophy. So some of this is my philosophy. This is what I choose to look at or not look at. If there was a different chair, it might change slightly. We never make policy. We can suggest policy to the governor. She can call us and say, what should I do? And we'll tell her. But it is not our job to make policy. We don't make business decisions. That's my decision. Other chairs have weighed more heavily into business decisions. But my position is, if you want to bring a nuclear industry to South Carolina, that is a business decision. You can talk to the Department of Commerce, but you don't need to talk to us. We have people call us, say, please support our drive to come to South Carolina, and we have people call us and say, please don't support their drive to come to South Carolina. It's an economic decision. There's no economic expertise on this board. It's not what we get into. The other thing we don't do is regulatory oversight. We are the eyes and ears of the governor, but DHEC and NRC are excellent regulators for the commercial facilities. DHEC, EPA, the Defense Board, and occasionally the NRC are excellent regulators of the Savannah River site. We do not get involved in regulatory issues. We check up, I'll call Shelley and ask her if she's doing okay. We check up on the regulatory issues. We want to know what's going on, but we are not regulators. So what do we look at? Health and safety. Again, this is my position. I just care about the health and safety of the workforce at the nuclear facilities. The logic is they're the ones who are in the trenches with the nuclear materials every day. I didn't mean that literally. They're the ones who are closest to the nuclear operations. If their health and safety is good, then my assumption is everybody else in the state is perfectly fine. Environmental protection. As I said, DHEC and EPA look at environmental protection. When I was talking about going to college with the Clean Air Act and the Clean Water Act, CERCLA and RCRA came about a decade after they created the Clean Air Act and Clean Water Act, because they discovered that unless you can't clean up the pollution in the water if you don't clean up the pollution at the source. So I kind of draw the line. Shelley and Rob are making sure that the source is cleaned up. It's part of our responsibility to make sure that the source is cleaned up, that the waste site is actually doing what it's supposed to do. Emergency preparedness and transportation. We also don't get into that a lot because, again, there are programs in the state and programs, the state, the commercial facilities, and DOE have excellent emergency preparedness programs. They're interrelated. Everybody talks to everybody else. Usually, they have lots of bells and whistles, and they will occasionally call us up and say, hey, you want to come let us show you how this works? We're like, yeah. But emergency preparedness, transportation, the same thing. The transportation regulations are well understood, well managed. All the people who need to know about them and manage them do. The things we do, we pay a lot of attention to, or I pay a lot of attention to workforce development and retention because we're all getting old. And most of us who are, let's see, how can I put this? A lot of people in my generation are retired or getting ready to retire, and there's an awful lot of information in their head that I think they don't even know is up there. And so when they leave, there's going to be a lot of institutional memory that goes with them, or as they leave, there's a lot of institutional memory that goes with them. The young generation workforce that I've seen, they're very eager, they're very smart, they know what they're doing, but some of our facilities are old, they might not know exactly how to make it work. So the processes and the procedures and the safety elements are all in place. It's not that it would never be unsafe to have these young people operating these things, but they're not quite as efficient until they learn the quirks of how all this stuff works too. More with Savannah Riverside than although we do deal with the new construction. Priorities and timelines. What needs to be done first? What is the schedule? And then always, always, always funding, because there's never enough money to do this. This is one of my pet peeves. We built all these bombs during the Cold War, and now we don't really care if we ever get rid of the waste. Okay, nuclear facility in South Carolina. SRS, the Governor's Council spends probably half to 2/3 of its time on the Savannah River site. There's also 7 operating reactors in the state at 4 different locations, and there are 2 under construction at BC Summer, all of which we look at. The Barnwell Low Levels Disposal Facility we've already talked about, and there is a Westinghouse Fuels fabrication facility in Columbia that builds the fresh fuel, the fresh uranium fuel for reactors all over the world. If you read the state paper, you know that they have had some safety issues in the last year. What do we do specifically for SRS, and how do we do it? Our format is exactly like yours. DOE, DHEC, contractors come and they present issues to us. Sometimes they all call us and say, we need to talk to you about this, and sometimes we'll call them and say, you need to come talk to us about this. We listen, as I said, we listen, could this affect anything, the health, welfare, safety, blah, 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 of the people of the state? If it does, we raise it to the governor, and it's her choice whether she wants to push it forward or not. We also are, DHEC and the Governor's Council are usually the 2 state agencies that will provide public comments on DOE documents. And Shelley and I always coordinate. We're not always in lockstep with what we're saying, but we're certainly not, we try and make ourselves pointed in the same direction in our public comments. So if you really want to know what's going on, the stuff is all archived on our website. Okay. Most common things that come up in the SRS. We do a little bit, y'all are limited to environmental management issues. Council is not, because there are other SRS activities that beyond EM. So we also can we talk to the NNSA, the National Security Administration, about their tritium and plutonium disposition, tritium treatment and plutonium disposition processes. Tritium, basically, we just make sure that they're in compliance with their environmental regulations, since all that's classified. But we look at the same stuff you do. We look at everything from the tank farms to disposal, to tank farms to solidification, and then we can look at disposal. We can look at WIP, and we can look at a geologic repository to be determined at some time in the future. The H Canyon and the HB line, so plutonium processing, spent fuel processing. We looked at the fuel in the pools. Here's a gray area, Savannah River National Lab, just because I am a scientist, and I said I didn't get involved with business decisions, but on occasion, the Governor's Council has advocated for the Savannah River National Lab. I think it's an extraordinary resource for the state of South Carolina that's not always appreciated, at least outside the state. Well, here we go. Okay. DOE, our meetings are the second Thursday of the first month of every calendar year quarter. So in common language, that's the second Thursday of January, April, July, and October. So I get calls every single meeting. When is this meeting? So put that on your calendar. We're in the South Carolina Department of Administration. If you really want to see our meeting, we have meeting notes, we have presentations, we have an audio file. Just Google South Carolina Nuclear Advisory Council and it will come up. I put my personal email on there with some trepidation, but because I told you that I was on this board and that I understand how hard it is, I also understand how frustrating it can be, or how sometimes you just might want to vent or ask me a question, a historic question. I'm always open to that. I brought 3 references that I use all the time. I know DOE has given you lots of references. I don't know if they've given you these. These are my go-to books for like definitions. One that I didn't bring is the Savannah River Site at Savannah River Site at 50, which I don't know if it comes on a CD. If you want to know anything about a facility or anything about a process or anything about the history of the site, that's your go-to reference. This one is called Understanding Radioactive Waste by Raymond Murray. And this is like Radiation 101. This talks about consent-based siting. No, this one talks about what is radiation, what is a half-life, what is an isotope, all that basic stuff. This one, the Nuclear Waste Primer, which is what I read from, is excellent. It is so good, so descriptive, has so full of information about nuclear waste in it. It's put out by the League of Women Voters. Suzanne Rhodes, who is frequently at your committee meetings, she's the tall, slender, gray-haired lady, she could get you this book. It's called the Nuclear Waste Primer. And the third one is Improving the Regulation and Management of Low-Activity Radioactive Waste, which talks about consent-based siting, which is how they're going to move forward to get a repository, and talks about risk-informed decision-making rather than just like they did high-level waste. Everything that comes out of the reprocessing is high-level waste. Well, and so automatically has to go to a repository. What if we did it by risk? Some of that is true waste and doesn't need to go to Yucca Mountain. So anyway, these are 3 really good reference books for you. With that, I will shut up unless there's questions. Nina.
Nina Spinelli Cab. Were y'all under the office of the governor before you moved to the Department of Administration?
No, we were in the, oh God, we were in the South Carolina Energy Office. Don't ask me why they moved us to the Office of Administration. Nobody knows.
Are y'all going to be moved out of that?
No, well, that was just the reorg that they did 2 years ago. As far as I know, we're staying. I don't know, but you know, everything's up in the air since there is no staff at all in the governor's office, as far as I can tell. So I don't know who we are, who we belong to. David.
David Hoyle, Cab. Karen, did the council give any advice to the governor with relation to any changes that are to be made in South Carolina with regard to the Fukushima incident?
You're talking about NRC's review and suggestion of how to handle the reactors we have? No.
Okay.
I don't think we did. Other questions? Gil.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate it. Hey, why is the representative position not filled?
Because Don Wells was on the board, he didn't run for re-election, and so the Speaker of the House has not yet appointed somebody. We have somebody. She worked for Santee Cooper. She was, I think, the fuel contractor for. Santee Cooper owns part of VC Summer, and she has some nuclear experience. So we're hoping that she wants to be on the board. It's up to the Speaker, but we hope we get her on the board.
Thank you.
Do you want another one?
Yeah, I thought of something else. How do you formulate your agendas?
Read the paper. People, really. I go to the CAB meetings. The Steve Byrne and Jim Lettle are plugged into their parts of the nuclear industry. They'll make suggestions. DOE has frequently called us and said, come talk. We want to come talk to you about this. Shelley has sometimes said, come, we need to talk about this. As I said, the emergency preparedness people will come when they want to show us new bells and whistles. We have gone, I'm trying to remember, there were fires. I can't remember. We sometimes go to headquarters too, to people at headquarters to come make presentations to us. We go to NNSA, we go to Pete Hanlon.
Do you ever take suggestions from special interest groups?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we
Thank
have.
you.
Questions?
Any further questions from the board? If not,
Thank you.
thank you, Karen.
Susan, before we hand it back over to you, Don has a question, I guess, for.
Done with you, Karen.
Oh, you're done with me?
Well, that was the next thing, back to the Nuclear Materials Committee.
Dawn Gillis, Cab. Mike, I'm not sure if you can answer this yet, but you said something about, or Tony, you said something about Maxine was at headquarters working on something this week. Is it something that we can know about? What she's working on and if there's any impact to what's going on with spent fuel relative to Savannah River site?
Tony Polk, Department of Energy. So, Dawn, there are a number of things that are on the agenda, I think, for spent nuclear fuel. One of those things that I can mention is that they continue to look down the road toward the disposition of spent nuclear fuel, and in particular, dry storage is high on the agenda there for what they might do to learn more. Other things, I'm not sure what else may be on the agenda, but I will be glad to talk to Maxine, and as we update you during the year on spent nuclear fuels, I'm sure that there will be some things from that we are likely to be able to share.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thanks again, Karen. Susan, back to you.
We go to our public comments period. We do have the results of this morning's vote on the committee chairs for the coming year. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I don't know if this is the right place to bring it up, but I wanted to ask DOE too. I'm interested in hearing, I mean, it's kind of a little bit of slash and burn going on in Washington right now, and I'm wondering if you think there is any possibility that due to massive cutbacks that cabs might be eliminated in the next year's budget. I mean, how does that get decided?
Let me step in front of this bullet. No, although, as Jack said earlier, we really haven't been any insight of the transition teams haven't been set up. I don't foresee a change to the citizens advisory boards nor the interaction next year. If we do start getting any indications of that, we will communicate any potential issues like that to you. In fact, I expect that would be discussed at the chairs meetings that we have every 6 months. There would be quite a lot of telegraphing of that, but I really don't foresee that.
Okay.
This is Jack Craig. I would agree with that. I think, as John said earlier in the budget presentation, the funding for the CAB remains a high priority on our overall priority list, and I don't see that going away.
Okay.
All righty then. Well, the results of the committee chair vote for this year. The Administrative and Outreach Committee, Eleanor Hobson. Facilities Disposition and Site Remediation, Dawn Gillis. Nuclear Materials, Larry Powell. Strategic and Legacy Management, Bob Dorr. And Waste Management, Gil Allensworth. And that brings us to our final public comment period. And because we did skip the one, just to remind you, we can extend the time for this one if needed. Do we have any public comment? And as a reminder, please state your name and stand close to the microphone.
Okay. My name is Marilyn Parson, and I am from Bluffton, South Carolina. I wanted to make a couple of comments that are brought to my attention because of a presentation by Dr. Rhodes from the Savannah River Ecology Lab. First of all, I'm thrilled to see the research going on with the effects of low-dose radiation. I think that's an area of research that there are great needs, and that's exciting to see that. The other thing I wanted to talk about, relevant to what Dr. Rhodes said, but also relevant to what Karen Patterson just said, and that was about public participation. Also, right now there is a lot of negative feelings against the government, I guess, and I just wanted to talk about how sometimes things do happen in a very positive way thanks to public participation and positive reaction from a federal agency, in this case, the Department of Energy. In January of 2014, this body, the CAB, passed a resolution that is called, and this was done in response to 2 years of comments and concerns from people coming to CAB meetings and to the board meetings and committee meetings. And this recommendation, which is number 317, was passed, and the subject of the recommendation was to fund an independent environmental monitoring program in Georgia. And basically, there were 2 parts to the recommendation. It asked DOE to initiate conversation with the Georgia environmental group, environmental regulators, initiate a conversation with them to try to start the process to initiate an independent monitoring program, environmental monitoring program, similar to what was in place in South Carolina that we've heard about many times, which is the environmental surveillance and oversight program that is in place in South Carolina. Well, in March, the Department of Energy responded to that recommendation, and if I can find it here, basically, well, what was pretty amazing is that they responded that rapidly, and that what they said, the most exciting thing happened. They said, well, we are not going to accept this recommendation as specifically written, but what we will do is ask Savannah River Environmental Lab to look at the radiological data that have been gathered over the years, and based on a review of that information, we will ask them to make recommendations to us about the situation. Would additional monitoring be needed? And all of this was to try to placate and to see if you could answer the concerns of the public, particularly the people in Georgia. Well, I thought, when we saw that, I thought, this is the best we could possibly ask for, to have an independent, well-respected laboratory look at the data and then make recommendations. Well, in September of 2014, the Savannah River Environmental Laboratory did a presentation to the CAB and it was a very, very long presentation covering the recommendations that they were presenting. And part of that were recommendations relevant to this concern of the public about radiological exposure to the public and the health concerns they had. Basically, and it's a very long report, I'm just going to summarize a little bit. First of all, they said, with the exception of a few caveats, they felt that the monitoring that was being done was adequate to provide information to protect the public and workers. The second thing, they had 4 recommendations that deal with communication. And they pointed out in their recommendations that the monitoring information and the environmental reports that are generated by the Department of Energy, by the South Carolina Department of Health and Environmental Control are quite technical and probably were more appropriate for regulators and others of the scientific community rather than the general public. So as a result of that, let me read just 2 recommendations. Consider developing a strategy of communication with local community audiences that incorporates limited monitoring data collected from those communities as a basis for providing outreach and education on radiological monitoring and data interpretation that can help local residents draw their own conclusions concerning health risks. And 2, utilize local community leaders to assist in the development of such education and outreach programs and work with them to reach community members for delivery of educational programs and materials. And today, in Dr. Rhodes' report, of course, he talked about the Savannah River Ecology Lab radionucleotide education, monitoring, and outreach programs. I tell you what, if you hang in there long enough, and you really, good things happen. This was so exciting that in 3 years now we have a program that is designed to help the public understand what really their exposure from the Savannah River site and other sources of radiological exposures. This is so exciting. The government listened to the public and did something that is, I think, very, very positive for the people of Georgia who stood before the CAB for 2 years, came meeting after meeting showing their concerns. And the government responded, and hats off to the Department of Energy for responding to the public in that way and for selecting the Savannah River Ecology Lab. Who would be better than that organization to do this? So thank you very much, Department of Energy, and to the Savannah River Ecology Lab for doing a wonderful job.
Thank you. Next comment.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk very slowly so no one gets to leave. I'm Becky Rafter with Georgia WAND, and I want to echo Marilyn's comments, actually, about gratitude to the CAB and to DOE, SRS, and to Savannah River Ecology Lab. I do want to make one minor correction, which is that the Savannah River Ecology Lab didn't look at Georgia's past data, which is what which they are going to be looking at in the current study. They only compared Savannah River sites data to South Carolina DHEC's data to see if it was repetitive and duplicative, and therefore did we need to have our own on the Georgia side. And then I want to direct my questions to these recommendations 341 and 337 around H Canyon. I just have a couple of questions if someone could answer them for me. The first is the spent nuclear fuel that's coming to H Canyon, or that would be coming to H Canyon. Where is that coming from? And am I allowed to ask questions and people answer them, or do they have to get noted that I have questions and then they appear in a bubble?
Generally, what we're doing in the public comment section is noting it. And,
okay, great.
Right, and we will find those answers.
Excellent, even sooner than we leave. That's great. So my questions are to find out where the spent nuclear fuel is coming from. Also, the recovered enriched uranium that's down blended and going off to use in commercial power reactors. Where are those reactors? In which states and which reactors? And another question I have about that is TVA, is the relationship with TVA involved in that fuel process? And what is that relationship with TVA in relationship to H Canyon, which does affect this body? And then is the tritium extraction from the NNSA side of things related to the H Canyon? Is any of that related to the H Canyon? Because those are not the rightly worded questions, but if I'm hoping that my point is coming across for the annals.
With them worded exactly like you like.
Okay, I'm really bad with that follow-up. Is this enough, just in case that doesn't happen?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
It's certainly noted now, but that's the thing, if you,
okay.
you know.
Okay, and I want to appreciate each one of you, and especially the outgoing CAB members. You will be missed. I don't know all of you, but the ones that I do know, I will miss you, and I look forward to continue building our relationships. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lindsay Harper, and I'm the new Programs and Communications Manager with Georgia WAND as well. I just wanted to say hello to everyone and introduce myself. This is my first CAB meeting. This has been an excellent introduction for me, so thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Anyone else? Okay.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming and for all your work. And in the early years, when I served on this very fine committee, we moved around the state a lot because of the area in which this board is answerable to. More recently, we have not moved around a lot, and as I pointed out in the meeting once, meeting in New Ellington over and over and over again, where there was only 1% of the area which this board serves, didn't seem like a very objective approach to the mission of the CAB. Now we're talking about cutting back government funding, so it's only realistic to assume that they'll be taking away some from the CAB. But I would encourage DOE, SRS management to provide funds for the board to move around like they have here today in Hilton Head and some of the other areas. It's very important to have a public image as broad as you can to maintain and to enhance public participation and spread knowledge of what this fine board does. Secondly, a few months back, at a meeting in the New Ellington facility, we were talking about the receipt of several kinds of foreign nuclear waste. the waste coming in from, or possibly coming in from Germany, had been characterized. The waste possibly coming in from Canada/Britain had been characterized. The waste coming in from Japan had not been characterized. And I asked that it be characterized. I asked, was there something special about that waste? Because at the time, the remark was made that it had to do with national security. If it did not, then I was wondering if more waste from Japan would be eligible to come to SRS. And if more waste from Japan could come to SRS, where would the line be drawn? Could it come from other nations? And of course, while SRS is a very good place to put waste, temporarily, we've all learned that there is no temporarily about waste. And this new little diagram, I think Mr. Fox, Dr. Fox showed us, has a box marked repository, federal repository, but that doesn't exist, and we don't know when it will exist. So receipts, especially receipts that haven't been characterized, possibly coming to SRS, should be of great concern to the board. And I repeat my request, please inform the board about the character of the Japanese waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more public comments? All right. Mr. Chairman, do you have anything else for the board?
Yes, I have a few brief comments to be made. At this time, I'd like to extend our appreciation to Mr. Jack Craig and his staff at the Department of Energy, Savannah Riverside, for your support of the CAB, both providing the financial support and the resources so that we can do what we have to do, and we surely appreciate that. To the agencies, DHEC, EPA, they are here day after day providing information from a regulatory perspective. I know some of their personnel are online during the committee meetings, and for that, we surely appreciate your support. The subject matter experts. I have never seen a group of experts that are eager to share their knowledge and experience with the board and the public. And you are here month after month providing us the information we need so that we can complete whether it's a recommendation, support presentation, or information presentation. You are here and willing to answer our questions, and we thank you for that information you have been provided. The CAB support staff. I cannot say enough about the staff because during my tenure, over the last 6 years, they have been here to support the CAB. When we leave at the end of our meeting, they are still working behind the scenes to make sure that we have the resources we need. You call them and they're very responsive. So they do a lot behind the scenes to make us do what we do. And for that, I appreciate you guys, and I know you will continue. And where's James? James came on the year before I did. But James has a wealth of knowledge about the CAB and our procedures, and he has been a tremendous resource. When we submitted this proposal for the training program, he was the first person to take it and ran with it, draft a framework for what it would look like, and it moved on from there. So James and the support team, we thank you, thank you, thank you. To the CAB. Over the years, you have provided a lot of time, a lot of commitment to the CAB to to fulfill the responsibilities of your committee and the mission of the CAB. Some of our members, you may not know, but some of our members are still in the workforce, but yet they are here. They use their annual leave oftentimes to attend these meetings. And that's a huge sacrifice, and it just shows their commitment to this board and to what we do in serving the public in terms of providing the best advice based on input from the public and to the Department of Energy, EM, and the Savannah River site. As I leave, it's a moment that I will always cherish. Over the last 6 years, I've worked with the members of the CAB. I've seen members come, I've seen members go. But this is the most rewarding thing I've done since I retired. I will always remember the relationships and the opportunities that I've had on this CAB. When I joined the CAB, I knew very little about Savannah River. I live across the river, but as I leave the CAB, I'm a lot more knowledgeable about what takes place. And thank you. The new chair and vice chair, I know they'll do a great job. I have full confidence, and I ask the board to support them as you move forward. You have to work collectively as a team. It's not I or me, it's the team, starting with the committee, to the chair, with the full board. You must continue to support them, and I know that you will. The last thing I'd like to address is the passing of the gavel is a symbol of the change of responsibilities from the outgoing chair to the incoming chair. Today, we will pass the gavel, and with that, the responsibilities off my shoulders onto the shoulders and I know she has the will, and she will continue to do a great job. One of the things when I first was elected as the chair, Nina and I had a conversation, and I asked her to focus on recommendations with the committee, and she gladly accepted, and she has been doing that. We communicate often, and I think we work well together, especially when we go to the chair's meeting. But there's something that she just keep talking about, how methodical I am, how neat I am. We go to a meeting, I'll give her a copy of my talking points. She said, "You're so neat."
Highlighted. Don't forget they're highlighted.
Well, now I'll be going. And so at this time, I would like to pass that gavel and the responsibilities. And Nina, if you will join me in the front.
in March. This meeting is adjourned. Yay! That is fun.